I'm Sara, the CEO and co-founder of Alloy. Today I'll be walking through how you can use automation to scale your Shopify store, and also use it for all sorts of manual tasks that are probably taking away your time during the holiday season. So first I'll be walking through some slides, going through what automation is, some concepts on how to build automations, and then more specifically how you can use Alloy with your Shopify store, and how different roles at your company can use automation for their jobs. Lastly, I'll be joined by my colleague Wyatt, who will show you how to use Alloy in action. So let's start with what automation is. So your current workflow is probably pretty messy. You have tons of different Shopify apps or independent apps helping you move data between, say, loyalty points to segmenting your email campaigns, and then from your customer service desk to email, etc. So all these messy lines kind of crossing over sometimes and duplicating work, or just costing you a lot of money to use them. And so automation helps you put all of this together and sits at the center of your workflows so that you don't have these overlapping lines. And also, when two apps don't connect to each other, automation enables you to connect those. And so you can kind of see by these two diagrams, Alloy as the automation platform sits at the center of this universe of apps and serves as this glue or even the piping between the different apps. So to use Alloy with your Shopify store, let's first talk about the concept of the e-commerce tech stack. So we started talking about this last year, where we put together a resource called the Alloy eCom Stack 2.0. So we did a 1.0 2 years ago, but we've since expanded that. And basically we're covering all the different categories of apps you might use, starting from the top, which we say is marketing. So marketing is usually the first sort of layer you add to your store when you first start out. And then you have more layered on post-purchase upsell, customer support, etc. And so we like to think about the stack because it's important to have all of your tools in place and think about it critically before you start automating, because automation requires data from different sources. And so Alloy, how this works with your stack is we can set up a trigger from any of these apps that we connect to, and then use logic to route, say, different flows depending on the data that comes in from the trigger app, and then execute actions in other apps. So there's just three components to what we call Alloy workflows. I'll kind of go into terminology so that this makes more sense. So workflows are just these, exactly what you think, your current workflow where you might be moving data from a Google Sheet to your 3PL and then slacking someone. That's a workflow. And we can actually replicate this in Alloy and make it hands-off for you, so you don't have to be doing any of that anymore. And so a workflow connects different apps and essentially executes actions and pushes and pulls data across them. A workflow run is every time a full workflow is executed from start to finish. And so we have a little section on each Alloy workflow that shows you how many times it's run. Usually, for example, if a workflow is triggered by a Shopify order being placed, then workflow runs are correlated with order volume. In other workflows, if you're starting when a new subscription is started and recharged, then it is related to subscription volume. And then trigger blocks, like I mentioned, are the starting points of a workflow where, for example, if an event happens in Shopify or after ship, then the workflow starts. You can also trigger a workflow from, say, your store, some custom script, through a webhook, or start a workflow manually. So there's other options, but usually people start with an event that happens in an app. And then an action block is when you take an action like sending data or pulling data. So sending data could be, say, sending a text through PostScript or Attentive, or updating a customer's tag in Shopify. And then pulling data can include getting a list of subscribers from the past week in Recharge, or getting a list of rows from Airtable or Google Sheets. So action blocks enable you to push or pull. So this is different because we're not listening for an event like in a trigger, we're just performing actions. So this has to happen after the trigger. And then logic blocks, like I mentioned, as you saw in that diagram, the trigger, the logic, and the action. Logic blocks can exist anywhere in between triggers and actions. And so they essentially let you, say, segment or personalize your campaigns. So segmentation, you can say if the total order value of this new subscription is equal to $10 or $20 or $30, you can perform different branches of action in different sets of action blocks depending on what logic you insert. And so this is what enables you to build more complex workflows that can let you be hands-off and pass off your manual work to Alloy. So let's go through a couple examples. Workflows within apps, so you actually don't have to connect two different apps to use an automation tool like Alloy. And so in this example, you see when an order is placed in Shopify, we want to tag the customer with their order number, also in Shopify. And as you can see, there's actually what we call variables that we're inserting, bringing from the Shopify trigger, like the data we get back when an order is placed, and then putting that into the customer. And so this is kind of what allows you to have data being passed from one app to another through the concept of what we call variables. In the second example, we have a ShipBob order shipped event causing actually not attentive, a PostScript send text event. And so as you can imagine, we can pipe data from ShipBob, for example, the order number or the order value, and pipe that into the PostScript text. In this third example, now we're using logic. And so kind of similar to the example I mentioned before, we can use the event Shopify order paid and then branch off based on the total order value from Shopify. So we can perform different branches of action that don't even necessarily have to have the same types of action blocks. So say if the order value is above $10, we'll do a new Google Sheet row. And if it's above like $50, we'll do another sheet and also do the same action of adding a row. But if it's above $100, maybe we want to text our teammate to do like a personalized message to that customer. And so we have a Slack block there. And those examples are pretty general, like anyone in your organization can set it up. Usually it makes sense if you're a smaller store to do that. But essentially automation is for anyone on your team. And so for founders, you're getting started, it's a way to save money from all these one-off Shopify apps. Like in that crazy diagram I showed in slide 1, you can kind of cut out these different tagging apps, different like reporting apps, and just use a workflow in Alloy. And so you can save maybe like $50 each. And then you can also automate reporting. So you can schedule regular Slack or email or Google Sheets reports by checking for different events or even running a workflow periodically. So you can trigger a workflow, say every week or every month. For those of you who are in ops, we connect to different 3PLs, ERPs, support tools like Gorgeous and Zendesk, so you can use Alloy to first streamline different systems like your spreadsheet to like ERP upload, for example, or like 3PL like updates to Slack. You can customize your support messaging, so you can enrich the customer profiles by bringing in data from, like, say, Shopify orders, or that's too basic. Let's say you can bring in, like, subscription data from Recharge or Smarter or Skio and say if it's a certain type of, like, item, we want to provide a different type of support or label this customer as, like, a VIP or a beta customer of a new product. And then thirdly, you can use order tagging more effectively to better manage, say, bundling, special SKUs, etc. So you can insert tags into your different apps like Klaviyo, PostScript, Shopify, whatever supports that. If you're in marketing, you can use Alloy as a way to centralize customer data into, say, Shopify or Sheets or wherever you like to keep all the customer attributes. Because I'm sure you're using, say, post-purchase forms to like capture where customers came from or like what they enjoyed about a certain product, and so you ideally want to have that in one place. So we let you do that centralization. You can also use Alloy to boost loyalty by bringing in data from these different sources and creating better rewards logic. Say, if someone renewed 8 times in a row, let's give them 10 extra points this month.
Hi everyone, my name is Wyatt Pettyjohn. I'm a Merchant Success Manager here at Alloy Automation, and today we'll be going through a quick demo on how you can get Slack notifications whenever there's a large order placed through your Shopify store. So we're here in the Alloy environment, and we're going to kick things off by looking at every order that comes through our Shopify store to see if it's big. So we'll be using the Shopify trigger, and then making sure that we're going to be kicking off this workflow whenever an order is created. Now next, we need to get the line items that come out of this order so we can see just how many items are being ordered. We're going to be doing this using a logic block and the iterate block. The iterate is basically a loop that allows you to go through a list and treat each item individually. So we'll be looping through the line items here, and that should give us each one of our line items in an order. Now we don't want to get a notification for every order that comes through, so we'll need to give some business logic to our workflow. Going back to the logic blocks, we'll have the if-else condition, which allows us to give a quantity, which we'll use for the line item quantity. Will allow us to give it some logic. So we'll say if the quantity is greater than, how about 50 for this demonstration? And then the true branch will be executed. So now our workflow is set up that if an order comes through Shopify, we're going to look at the line items, and if someone has ordered more than 50 of a single line item, we'll execute true. Now what are we going to do here? Well, why don't we give ourselves a Slack message? We want to post a message. We like to post things in our random channel here at Alloy, and now we can have some fun with the content composer. We could have this say some dynamic data that we've already got. So how about a new large order has been placed. Why don't we give the customer's email address? And why don't we say the number of items they ordered? And why don't we give the name of the item that they are purchasing? Great. So now we are perfectly set up to get a Slack notification whenever a large order is made. We'll activate the workflow here. And as you can see in our Shopify store, we have a quick test order for us. Looks like we're ordering 119 units of coffee. We are thirsty drinkers over here at Alloy, and this is our test user. Go ahead and mark that as paid because this one can be on the house today. And our order is created. Going over now to Slack, see we're in the random channel. We could wait for this notification to come through. There we go. We have a new large order. Our customers ordered 119 units of coffee. So that is how we can utilize Alloy to get Slack notifications when large orders are placed in our Shopify store.